Hey, this is Steve with Dabble Lab, and in this video I am going to show you how you can call a remote API from an Alexa skill and how you can use this simple, not really a trick, but I guess a technique for calling remote APIs to create lots and lots of different kinds of skills. So I came across this repository, GitHub repo of public APIs, and it's really good. I mean, there's a ton of them in here, and these are all free APIs. And there's I didn't count them, but there's probably hundreds in here. And if you know how to call an API from an Alexa skill, this creates lots and lots of different possibilities for skills that you could build. And we have a template. There's a Dabble Lab template that is set up for calling a remote API, so it's a good place to get started. You can get that by going to dabblelab.com and then going to templates, and it's one that we did a long time ago, but number 2 here, the Alexa remote API skill template. To download the code, you'll need to log in. If you don't have an account, you can create one. They're free. Just click this link here, need an account. And then once you're logged in, just download the source code here. And then you can extract the zip file. It comes as a zip file. And then all the code that we need is in here. We're going to need the model, and we're going to need this index file. But before we get into that, head over to developer.amazon.com. This is where we're going to set up the skill. If you don't have an Amazon developer account, you can create one. They're free. And then once you've created your account and logged in, then you would just head over to the Alexa developer console, and you can get there through this little ellipse menu here. So Alexa developer console, that's where we are right now. And then from here, you just want to choose create a skill and give your skill a name. And we're going to call this one just demo skill. And we're going to leave this default here, custom, and we're going to use the Alexa hosted for Node.js method to host our skills backend, and then create skill and leave the default here, the hello world. We're going to overwrite that code, but we'll leave that. And then this takes about a minute or so to finish up, and while that's doing its thing, let's go back over here. So an API, if you're not familiar with working with APIs, it's basically just a URL that's going to return data that you can then use, in this case, in your skill, but APIs are used for mobile apps and web apps and all kinds of other stuff. The data generally is going to come over as a JSON document or in a JSON JavaScript object notation format. It doesn't have to. There's APIs that will just return raw text and APIs that will return XML and all kinds of other stuff. So you'll want to refer to the API's documentation. This one here, like for example, if you wanted to do a skill with daily cat facts, you could use this API here and go to their documentation and read how you would call that API. So this is the base here, this cats.heroku. We'll see if we can get it to work here, and then /facts. So if we just go like this and then /facts, there's a whole bunch of cat facts there, all in a JSON format. We're going to use, I found another one that I think is pretty cool, this daily affirmations. I guess it's not daily affirmations. Every time you request the API, it gives you a new affirmation. You know more than you knew yesterday. And so we'll get started with just the base template. And the base template uses an API from, I think, OpenNotify. It tells you how many astronauts are in space. But we'll look at the code in the template, and then we'll change it up to use some of these other APIs. So for starters, let's update the interaction model here. So if you go to the skill after it's done building, then you can load the interaction model. And if you click this drag and drop a JSON file here, and then go find that file in your downloads. If you downloaded the zip and unzipped it, it's here in the models folder, this en-us. And I'm gonna change this to demo skill. This is the invocation name. This is what the user is going to use to start the skill. So if you're using this for an actual skill that you're going to publish and send through certification, you don't want to use demo skill. And then save, and we'll build the model. And while that's building, we'll go set up the other. So we just need, like I mentioned, this index file. So the code from the index file in the template is what we need to get. And so if you go back to the template code, to the Lambda custom folder, find index, and then just open it with a text editor or your code editor and copy everything in that file. So select it all and copy it. And then we're going to paste it right over the index.js in the Alexa developer console. So just select over all of that and then paste. And then you can save at that point and deploy. Still saving, but it'll deploy in a minute. And yeah, let me see. Yeah, this open api.opennotify.org astros.json. If we copy that and take a look, see that it's returning JSON, and it's more specifically returning a JSON array. That's these brackets here, which is a list of objects, and each object that starts with these curly braces here, ends with a curly brace and then a comma and then the next object. But each object includes a name property and a craft property. So this is the name of the astronaut, and this is the craft that they're on. Looks like they're all on the International Space Station. So let's test that out just to make sure it's working. Saving, I don't know what that means. I think it's deployed. We'll go over here to test. Enable testing for development. If you get prompted to allow access to your microphone, you might want to do that. That lets you use the voice testing here.
There are currently 6 astronauts in space. Their names are Andrew Morgan, Oleg Skripka, Jessica Mayer, Chris Cassidy, Anatoly Ivanishin, and Ivan Wagner.
That is the default for the API starter skill, the skill template number 2. If you take a look at the code, there's really just a couple of pieces here that are important. Mainly this. So what's happening in this get remote data here is there's a function down here called get remote data, and this is the function that's making the API call. So you pass in a URL to this function and it returns whatever that URL returns. So you need to be familiar with the format of what the URL is going to return. So like in this case here, we do get remote data, and we're getting the list of astronauts, and then we can loop through the list, and that's what's happening here. We're looping through this array of objects to build up our response. If you wanted to change this so that it worked with, like, let's say the affirmations, it's really easy. You would just do this. Just take the URL from affirmations. And then down here, we would parse the data so that we're taking basically a string response. It's a JSON response, but it's a string when it comes in here, and we're parsing it into an object. And then I don't really need this anymore. Because this doesn't have an array. Where is it? So this is just going to return just this one property here, which is affirmation. So all we need to do is include that in here. So this is a really, really simple example. And so data is this this object here that we set up that contains the contents of what the API returned, and we're getting that from this get remote data function down here. And then this is the property in the object that's being returned in this case here. So this affirmations property. So with just that minor change, we can save it and then deploy it. And then once it's deployed, we can go back and test. Demo skill.
Don't forget to enjoy the journey.
That little change is all we needed to do. And so I could go through and create literally hundreds of different skills quickly by just being familiar with some of the APIs that are out there. And each API is going to work a little bit different. So again, you've got to look at the documentation, and some of the APIs are going to require an API key, which you basically generally you sign up and then you get an API key, and then you use that API key in the request, and that gives you access to the API. But a lot of them don't. They don't require any authentication at all. So all these ones that say no don't. So you can just go through this list, and I'll leave a link to this in the notes. But you can go to this list and kind of brainstorm different possible skills come out of all of these different things. And with that that template, it makes it pretty easy to get started. Okay, that's it for this one. Hopefully you found that valuable. If you have any comments or questions, you can leave those and I'll respond just as quickly as possible. If you did find this valuable and you're watching it on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to the Dabble Lab YouTube channel at youtube.com/DabbleLab. Thanks so much.